Welcome to the latest Lander Pioneer Museum and Wind River Visitors Council virtual adventure trek. Today we are visiting the historic Louie Lake Lodge, located on Louie Lake on the Loop Road above Lander in the southern Wind River Mountains. The lake has been a destination for people since gold was discovered at South Pass and the Lander Valley was settled. It was probably named by Émile Grenier, a French engineer who was looking for gold in the area. For many years, there was no road into the lake, and the trip was made by horseback or hiking. In the 1930s, with a growing movement to expand outdoor recreation on public lands, a road was started from the South Pass side by the U.S. Forest Service, and from Sinks Canyon, the Civilian Conservation Corps built the switchbacks and the road up and over Fossil Mountain. With access by vehicle to Louie Lake, a lodge and some cabins were built in 1939. Over the years, the complex has expanded. The current owners, Steve and Vera Ferber, are going to fill us in on the history.
Hello, welcome to Louie Lake. We're here to do a virtual trek with Randy Wise and the Pioneer Museum from Fremont County. We'd like to talk a little bit about the history of the Louie Lake Basin, Louie Lake Lodge, the road, and access in here over the years for the recreationists.
So we think some of the first people who came through here obviously were Native Americans, trappers, mountain men. There were people who ran their sheep and their cows up here. Carmody Meadows, they had a sheep camp over here. And he talks about coming over here and bringing a fishing boat over, catching fish in Louie Lake. There's a number of articles we found about people fishing up at Christina Lake. When Grenier came through to make his ditch, we have a map that he drew, and he and his company came right past here and on up to Christina Lake. So there were people who had access to this lake, but a good road for an automobile to come through was a while in coming. In the early 1906 to 1916, there was a group of people that talked about putting an irrigation system and a power plant on the far end of Louie Lake, and so they were coming in from that end. Carmody and his crew were coming in from this side. But the forest ranger, Roy Williams, was very interested in the 30s as the Depression was ending and people were really interested in outdoor recreation. He felt like this area had a lot of potential for recreation. And so he was able to acquire some money, and with the help of the CCC and some other people, they set about building a good passable road from Sinks Canyon up to here. And the CCC worked on that end of it, and my understanding is the Forest Service started at this end, and they worked together to meet. Finally, in 1938, there was a passable road, not a great road yet, but a passable road to come into Louie Lake for cars and other people to come in to recreate.
When the passable road was finished in 1938, the U.S. Forest Service, like Vera said, had decided that a great recreational opportunity was here at Louie Lake. So a fellow by the name of Ralph Costner from Lyman, Nebraska, was given a concessionaire permit to build Louie Lake Lodge. And he did so in 2 years. In 1939 he built some cabins, and in 1940 he built some additional ones. And that's what we have here now, are these historic cabins have been here ever since that time period. And we've tried to maintain them in their historic state and offer them for rent to people that come up and want to recreate here at Louie Lake.
So according to the newspaper article, he was going to build a store, and they would also serve lunch and dinner, or maybe lunch and breakfast out of the store. He would build a bathhouse and some double cabins. The buildings you see behind you have two different styles of log. We're not sure if that was the different years or if just different builders. The article also said he was building, as you'll see, the store with what they call two-sided logs. You can see they're flat. The top and the bottom have been cleared off, that were cut at the Imes sawmill and brought here on site to build these cabins. So we're pretty sure from the photos that this was built the first year, this store. There was also a gas station here. There's a gas pump that you'll see in some photos that was right out here. And the road access to the lodge came right in front of the store, right here. So the gas pump was on this side, and cars could pull up there to fill up. It was one of the great old ones where you pumped the gas up to you saw how much, and then gravity fed it into the cars. We have a couple things to show you.
You can see that the Ime sawmill, they cut the top and the bottom off on the sawmill, and then they brought the logs in here and they shaped the corners with their scribing tool and built the log building by stacking those flat logs up. It also says that they used horsehair, was it? Or
I'm not sure
some
about
kind
that.
of hair they put in here for chinking to keep the weather out. When we arrived here in 1996, we found this old gas measuring stick. I guess out here somewhere where the gas pump was, there was an underground tank, and they would put this stick down in there to see how many gallons were left in the bottom of that tank. And hopefully you can read those numbers.
Okay, so this is the inside of the building that before, historically, and we still call the store. Years that are not COVID, we usually have a store in here. We sell soda pop and candy bars, things like that. Historically, a lot of old timers will remember when they had booths in here and they served food. They still called it the store, so they must have sold some kind of commodities also. A lot of the things that you see in here are things that we found on the premises when we took over. We don't always know the dates of all of them. This old ladder was someplace on the property. We just thought it was kind of interesting looking, so we hung it up. A lot of the things up on the shelves we found in cabins or in storage rooms or in here in the store. And just thought they were kind of fun historic things, and so we've kept them and added a few of our own things and put them up. This stove was not here, but they would have had some kind of a stove in here. There's obviously a chimney. So we mostly just sell souvenirs and soda pop, things like that out of here. This is our check-in desk where we check people in who come to stay in the lodge. Kind of our hangout place. We serve, if we have employees that live up here, we all eat our dinner here and cook here, and we have a little kitchen in the back. I know early on when we first moved here, I talked to a woman in town who worked up here the first couple of years that it opened. She was one of the cabin cleaners, and they slept in the back. I don't know how they had a kitchen and sleeping quarters, but her and her friend that was also cleaning cabins slept back there, so this was also their home.
Yeah, the old. You got a couple of them at the museum.
We do.
There's one in that home comfort one. The cabins that were originally built here, this first building is the bathhouse. It has 2 bathrooms on the left and right and a laundry room in the middle. And then this is one of the double cabins that's been talked about. It has that same construction style where they sawmilled the top and the bottom of the logs. And then over on that side we have 3 individual cabins that have a different construction style, which we'll show you the details of.
Okay, the original plan called for 2 or 3 double cabins, but this is the only double cabin. And having stayed in here, you can hear everything through the wall, even almost a whisper, as if you were in the same room. So I don't know if that's why they changed their mind and stopped doing double cabins, or if there was some other reason, but this is the only double cabin that remains.
On these cabins, a construction style that I really kind of enjoyed, they call this a beaver cut end. And it was actually hand hewn with an axe, and they cut this off as if a beaver had chewed that off, and it gives a kind of a unique design style for all of these cabins. Go ahead.
So the original builders were kind of creative. They didn't like just a straight old post holding up their porches. And if you notice, each cabin has some kind of a unique post. This one is burl wood. Some of them have a big curve to them, but all of these posts, we were careful to keep them original. We thought they were kind of interesting and unique. Other than one, we had to change.
One of the problems that we encountered when we bought the place in 1996 is the bottom of these posts, all of them were rotten. And so we devised a way where we put a concrete pillar down here on the bottom and sawed off the rotten part so we could retain these original posts and leave them in place. Everywhere that were.
So in 1996, when we took over the lodge, the porches had some issues. They were built out of big rocks like this one here with cement in between them, and the water and the freezing and all of that, the weather had taken their toll, and the porches were all crooked and with holes and gaps in them. So we removed all the rocks and just laid cement porches, but we've used the rocks different places around the lodge for stepping stones and things like that. but that was the original ones, were rock.
We talked about the sawmilled logs on the other cabins where they sawmilled the top and the bottom. These cabins will have a little different technique. You see the beaver cut ends, but the logs themselves, instead of being they're full round logs, and then they put a piece of wood in between here. It's actually pie shaped, and they have to manually build those, a lot of time consuming pieces, and they cut them on an angle like a piece of pie, and then they fit them in there to cover these gaps up, and that's what they use to keep the weather out of the cabin.
And they also put horsehair and some other things in there for insulation, and then put the pie-shaped piece in on top of that.
Yep.
And the windows were probably all individually.
Yeah, they were all custom-made windows, single pane, glazed. You know, the 9-panel, 6-panel. Yeah.
A lot of intensive work.
Yeah. I did look at that. Oh, we can move out of the way.
Okay, so this is the inside of the cabins. They're all about the same. They each have 2 double beds. As far as we know, these beds are original. Were built by the original concessionaire. Every cabin has a bed, a table, and a wood-burning stove. We updated a few things. We put new cupboards in and new countertops, but there's no running water in the cabins. Guests have to haul their own water in, just like they were pioneers. There's a dry sink that drains out. For cook and heat, they have to use the wood-burning stove. Some people know how to do it. Their grandma had one or their mom had one. For other people, that's quite an experience to figure out how to cook their dinner on a wood-burning stove.
One fun experience we've had is when we're around the lodge, we see more smoke coming out of the windows than we do the chimney. We know the folks have started the fire in the oven rather than in the firebox.
Right.
Vera, can you show us the oven so people watching the video know?
So they assume that because this is the largest place, that's where the fire should go. But that is really the oven, and the fire itself needs to go in this firebox.
Yeah.
There's a couple of unique pieces of furniture that were here when we bought the place, so we're not sure how far back they go. But this is one of them. This must have been a style that was popular a number of years ago, where they took just an old desk and then they cut like half rounds, I would call them, of sticks, and they glued them on the front of the desk drawer. You can see on the desk drawer and along the side here, and actually took slices of log and covered the leg. So behind this, underneath, there's a regular old leg, furniture leg, and then they just covered it with this chunks of log to make it look like it was log furniture. Kind of an interesting, well, and even the mirror. You can see how they put slabs of log along the edge of the mirror where there was just a piece of wood. Kind of an interesting way of making it look log cabiny from an old piece of furniture.
Okay.
So this is cabin number 2. Basically the same, 2 double beds, same style of beds and tables. Here's another piece of furniture, a vanity that they did the same thing with. Added all the log trim to make it look like it was log. This one we have changed stoves. The wood burning stove in here finally gave up the ghost and died. We found a new one, but we couldn't get it through the door. So we just have this little water fridge, which actually works great. People can cook a 1-pan deal.
You know, back in the early days, the pioneers and the older residents will remember the outhouse. We still have one on the property, and one time we had a lady here from Chicago rented one of our older cabins, and I kept seeing her walk out to this building and come out, and I said, we have a modern bathhouse down there with flush toilets. And she says, well, I want to have the entire experience. I've never used an outhouse before, and so I'm going to do it on this trip.
So when we took over as permittees in 1996, we had a plan with the Forest Service to build some additional cabins. These 2, we call them our family cabins. They're larger, they have bathrooms in the cabins, and they sleep 6 to 8 people. We also have a small cabin out behind the lodge that just sleeps 2 people with a bathroom, a little more modern, and then the lodge itself. And that was part of our permit. They allowed us to build those additional buildings so that this would be a little more financially viable. Okay, so originally back here was the horse corral. And the building on the right we call the Wrangler cabin. That's been here for, we don't know exactly how many years, but for a lot of years. I know Bill Bartholomew, a local log builder who helped us with the lodge, said when he was a young man, he and his wife and baby lived in that little cabin all summer long while he worked up here. The cabin over here we call the barn. The back of it had all the saddles and the horse tack and all of those things. And then there were living quarters in the front. Again, I'm assuming probably for the employees.
Okay, the most modern building here at Louis Lake Lodge at this point is what we call the Lodge building. It was built between 2002 and 2015. All of the logs and material came from on-site or within a few miles of here. We drug it in and put it in place, and now it has modern facilities in there with kitchens and bathrooms and all of that.
Rental rooms.
He did the roof.
He did the hard stuff. So Steve mentioned that most of the logs came from on-site or someplace here close. And of course, like for these logs and stuff, we spent a long time looking for just the right shape. When he was putting this together, why he realized when he started fitting it all in, it was too short. He'd cut it off too short. He said, wait a minute, I can solve that. He went back up on the mountain and found the stump that he cut it off from and was able to cut another 6 inches off the stump and add it to the bottom. And you can hardly tell. Okay, so this is my own personal history with Louis Lake. It starts with my dad. This is a picture of my dad. He was a civil engineer for the Union Pacific Railroad. And in around 1959, we lived in Lander for a summer. He was the surveyor that surveyed for the railroad to come up to the iron ore mine. And while he was here, he fell in love with this whole area. In '62, we came back and lived in Rock Springs. He was the project engineer that built the railroad up to the iron ore mine. So he loved Wyoming and he loved Fremont County and the mountains and the desert. Whenever someone would ask him where he was from, he would say Wyoming. I don't know that we came and stayed at the cabins, but we spent a lot of time up here fishing and vacationing. One year we discovered the cabins, and when I was in high school, he made a reservation to come back here. That particular week there was a derailment on the railroad and he was called away. So the first time we stayed here, actually, Steve and I came on our honeymoon in 1975 and stayed in one of the cabins. Every year after that, my dad would rent the cabins. He would bring his children and his grandchildren here. We would stay in the cabins. We would make memories. We would go backpacking. We would hike. It just really became a special place for our family. In 1950, about 1995, sometime around there, we were living in northern Alabama. I always say Steve had a midlife crisis. He got tired of corporate America, decided to do something different, and we were able to get the permittee to come here and live at the lodge and make that family dream become a reality for our children and our grandchildren and my brothers and sisters. They were all very supportive and they've all worked and made this place a special place for us. It's been interesting over the years as we've lived here and hosted guests, how many guests come and say, I remember when my dad brought me up here, my grandpa brought me here. I have such special memories of this place. We're grateful that we've had a chance to make this a family-friendly place where all these people, probably in the hundreds, I wish I would have kept a little ledger of all the memories and all the people who came here, make a special place for them.
Of course, this is Louis Lake. It's been a great opportunity for a lot of people to recreate here for many, many years. It was said that Carmody, who is a sheep man, he brought the first boat in here and kept it on Louis Lake. Some people say it was a houseboat. There's also been some summer cabins that were built over on the south shoreline over here that are now gone. Mike Dabbage family from Hudson, I know, had one over there. I've also seen a picture of the Trimmer houseboat, which was built out of logs, and it was actually like a pontoon boat that he kept on this lake and floated around and did his fishing off of that. When the original Ralph Costner built the lodge, it was reported that he had 8 motorboats, fishing boats, with guides available for people to use on the lake as they wanted to. And over the years, the fishing has been with lake trout, and there's also some landlocked salmon and rainbows. And today, of course, we have the hatchery fish called the splake, and also the salmon are still in here. Peace.